lesson 40 through 44. Now we're going to cover the duration that is 1.5 beats. This is, in my teaching experience, one of the more tricky rhythms. It's the one that when students and kids especially see it in their music and sight reading, they usually get it wrong. Many of them, I shouldn't say all of them, but many of them usually get it wrong. And then I usually bring them back to the work that we've done in this book, and I say, what's the silly word I use for this rhythm? And some of them remember and some of them don't. And then I say it's ta. Remember, we're going to shake it 3 times because it's worth 1.5 beats, right? So 1.5 is the same as having half, half, and half, right? If you have half, 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 that totals 1.5. And so usually they understand at that point. If they don't, then I go back to the cookie, talk about 1 cookie, and then we break it in half. We have 2 halves, and then we get 1 more half. So half, half, half. They visualize the cookie, or if they like pizza, do pizza, or pie, or cake, right? So either way, then they can visualize that, and then they understand. And personally, I think this one's a tough one because it's one of the first times that we are carrying a duration, like a sound of music, across the beat. So, and then the note ends in the middle of the beat. So it's very kind of obscure. It's difficult to really grasp tangibly. And so that's why I highly encourage the concept of subdivision. And subdivision is basically when you take whole parts, like 1 beat each, right? 1, 1, 1, 1. And then we start to break them down into smaller units because things don't always fit nicely and in nice, neat packages in 1 beat units. So we do have to start thinking about, well, what would it look like if each of those 1 beats were broken down into halves, right? So if we have 4 1 beat units, right, and we're going to divide everything in half, then we have 8 of them now, right, because the 4 have now split, and now we have 8. Okay, it's kind of like taking one guy and they split and then they formed 2, right? And if you keep that idea going, then those have split and then it goes into another 2, so then they keep on multiplying that way. Or like think of a family tree, or there are lots of situations where things are kind of breaking off and there 1 is splitting into 2, 1 is splitting into 2. So that's the idea. And then there are also times in the future in more advanced music where we divide the beat into other increments. So we can divide 1 beat into 3 parts. So we could divide 1 beat into 5 parts. And those get tricky because those are, odd numbers and they're kind of irregular units to be, kind of managing. So that gets tricky. But once we understand the concept and as we progress in our careers as a violinist or whatever instrument you're playing, then you begin to, those concepts become easier and easier and easier because you understand the fundamental basis of it, and then you just expand upon it. So going back to lesson 40, we have first of all the tie, and I really like how in this book Joanne Martin does that first because it shows you the parts that are inside, the components. So we have a quarter note, and then it's going to be tied into the 8th note. And if you remember from our previous lessons, if you haven't watched them, I would highly recommend you go and watch all the ones that lead up to this one, at least in the rhythm series, that the tie combines 2 notes and it becomes 1 long note. It becomes 1 sound, not 2 separate notes. So if you were playing the violin, you would continue the bow without changing it, right, for both of these guys. If the tie weren't there, then you would play those 2 notes and you would actually probably change your bow direction. That's the simplest way to play. So you play the quarter note and then you would change directions for the 8th note. In the case of the tie, we're just going to use 1 continuous bow sound. So the words I use here are ta, and then this last 8th note, see how he's not tied into anything? He is an island, he is by himself, and so that's an eighth note by itself. You can say ta, or you can say stop. So I usually, again, give the choice up to the student. Whatever they find that's easier to kind of roll out of their mouth, that's the one we use. Okay, so for this video, ta, ta, maybe we'll just stick with ta to keep it all streamlined and matching up. So the words we're going to use here are blue, right? And then this one we could say pizza. And then starting from here, we're gonna say ta, ta, all right? So I'm just gonna show you, sorry, before we start line 1, I'm gonna show you, since we have 3 of these in a row, how they would sound. Okay, so this is our pulse. This is a blue, blue, blue. So we start out with that 1 beat, very normal pulse. And then I'm gonna be thinking inside of there, I'm gonna subdivide. I'm gonna think pizza, pizza, pizza. So I'm going tick tock, or top, 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 stop, 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 stop. So for every pulse, I'm subdividing 2 notes. Once I get that ta, 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 ta in my mind, that's how fast I'm going to shake it. So ta. So why am I shaking and putting pulses in my ta like that? So that in my body I feel the subdivisions. All right. So here, let's try this one together. Okay. Ready, and ta, 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 ta. So now let's try line 1 all the way through. So here's our pulse, still same pulse. Ready, and blue, 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 pizza. Ta, 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 ta. If you're not sure how fast to shake the ta, then I would say clap, right? Or say blue, 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 and then switch to pizza. If you say many pizzas in a row, it helps you get ready, and then it's much easier. So you could just say pizza, 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 and then that way you understand what speed we're going to be counting our ta's at. So we'll do one more, and then we're going to talk about the other rhythm that is introduced in here. Let's try line 2. Okay, so we'll say pizza for these 8th notes here, and we'll say pizza for that one there. Okay, ready, and pizza, blue, pizza, pizza, ta, 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 blue, pizza. Sorry, I paused a little bit here by accident. I'm really picky about that, so just want to let you know, because I would make my student do it again if there was a little bit of a pause there, just to make sure they understand. So now the other rhythm that's introduced here, as I've mentioned before, it's always introduced up here as well. She does a great job of doing that. This one is called the dotted quarter note. So anytime you see the dot on the side of the note, it's called a dotted, and then whatever that note is. So this one looks like a quarter note, doesn't it? Right? So it's a dotted quarter note. In the previous units, we had a dotted half note. So it looks like a half note, which half note is 2 beats. And then with the dot on the side, now it's a dotted half note, and that one is 3 beats. So it works the same. You'll see the dot on the side on many different types of rhythms. There could be a dotted 8th note, there could be a dotted 16th note, a dotted pretty much anything. There's even a dotted whole note, okay, but for another time. So so for this one, I also use the word ta, just to keep it simple. Remember in previous lessons I said, if I don't have a really convenient word for a certain type of rhythm, I just say ta. And ta just works for everything. So any rhythm you have to say, if you find this word system too tricky, you can just say ta all the time. But I find that most of my kids, most of my students, whether even adult students, they don't have trouble saying blue or pizza or tuhu or anything for the really, really common ones, and that's exactly the point. The rhythms, the durations that we see over and over and over and over, so many times that they just kind of become part of our system. Those are the words, those are the ones that I have silly words for. And the rhythms that are not so often seen, we can just revert to ta. And that way, anytime we see very familiar rhythms, then we see it, and then hopefully I'm trying to trigger this response where we see something and then we hear the word, oh, that's a blue, or oh, that's a pizza, and then automatically we know what the rhythm sounds like. So that's kind of the psychological process that I'm going for, why I like this system. So that's the reason why I use it. So basically anything can be said using a ta, and in fact certain rhythmic systems use ta all the time. All right, so that's what we're going to do here. So this tied quarter note and eighth note is the same duration as this dotted quarter note. They sound exactly the same when we listen to somebody play it or say it, but on paper they look different. Often I get the question, then why do we have to have two versions? It's a very good reason, a very good question, and there is a very good reason why we need to have both. So in the future I will show you some examples of why we need one or the other. So we can talk about that next in a future video. Let's try line 3 together now. Okay, ready? Here's our B. Ready? And pizza blue, pizza, pizza, ta, 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 blue, pizza. So I would just continue to do that, all the way through there. We have similar things in 41. We have lots of dotted quarter notes. In lesson 42, we have ties again and dotted quarter notes. And then 43, we have the dotted quarter notes, and now we're mixing in other rhythms, particularly the half note. And then so that way we have a bit more variety. We're kind of broadening the spectrum of possible durations that we're going to be utilizing at the same time.